Now these wheels do get driven. I forgot to mention, and it was brought up, that there are chains that come across and drive these sets of wheels so that they're being driven across the field with the mover drive as well as all the rest of the wheels. So they do put a chain around like that, and then there's another one. They don't overimpose each other, but you do have chains to drive the wheels that are attached to the mover itself.
And that pipe is a 40-foot section pipe also, right? That's
it's a good question. Off of the mover, what they do is they go 20 feet on either side. They cut one right in half, and then there will be a sprinkler 20 feet on one side of the mover and 20 feet on the other side of the mover, and no sprinkler right at the mover. So there's three really kind of drives on these wheel lines that are available. You can have a gear drive, a hydraulic drive, or a hydrostat drive. And the hydraulic and the hydrostat are very similar. The gear drive is where you would actually have a direct, you fire up the engine and you engage a clutch and away she goes. Full speed ahead. Right? Yep. Yeah. All or nothing. So that's the value of, they said, hey, that's just a little crazy. We want to be able to regulate the speed, so they went to the hydraulic, was the next generation of wheel lines. So that would be much more common. And then to the hydrostatic. And sometimes they'll even have a little platform. You can stand there and let it walk you with it. You know, they're set up so that you don't even have to walk. They'll just kind of walk you along with it. So that can happen as well. How they're set up in the field, again, with the valves, you have to have the right wheels for the right valves, obviously. But some other things that will happen is some farmers will reduce the number of valves that are in the field. So they don't have as many valves to run over. And instead of putting one every 60 feet, instead of putting one of these valves every 60 feet, they'll go 180 feet with them, or 120 feet, and then use swing joints to match up to the field on the offset. So you could put one of these every 180 feet and then run swing joints between them. And you have less valves in the field. You have a little more hydraulic resistance due to the fact that you're going to run 60 feet sideways with a swing joint and then send it down the field. We'll take a little peek at that. It's kind of a combination mainline, wheel line gig. Normally, you'll see valves every 60 feet. But what some people do is they'll come in here and say, well, we'll just put a valve here. Put it here. Let's put it here. We'll put one here, and then we can go this way with a swing joint and water when the line's in this position. Then when it sits right here, we can just water it straight up. We don't need a swing joint. When we say a swing joint, that would be a 60-foot of aluminum tubing, or two 30-foot pieces of aluminum tubing to get here, then an elbow, and then hook up to your telescope adapter or your hose and go on down the line with your wheel line. And so these would be valves, the black.
Are these generally centrally located in the field?
These would be at the edge of the field. Edge of the field. What we're trying to do is get everything out of the way and have as few as possible. So that would be a reason to do that. And it might save them a little money on the installation. And then it would feed this one. So you could get 1, 2, 3 sets out of one valve. Then you come down here and here's your next valve. You hook this one up. And then you can swing joint up to this one. You can have this one direct. And then another valve down here, you can swing joint down and take it out. So instead of having 6 valves, we've cut ourselves down to 2. So that's a way to save a little money on the process. Another thing that they will do is they'll go 120 feet and then run 1 valve and go 30 feet on either side of it. Would that be right? 30 feet? No, that doesn't work out right. This is the common thing to do. What some people will do is they will, what I'm trying to think of is offsetting. Say that you're going to run the line the first time across the field right on the valves. Say you just ran your 60-foot valves. The second time across the field, so the first time you're going to run right down the valves. First set, we just keep coming down the field right off the valves. The second time across the field, you don't start at this end and roll and start irrigating backwards. You roll back and start at the same place you began the time before. So that if it took you 10 days to get down this far, you roll back and start on the 11th day up here. You don't start on the 11th day down here and take you 20 days to get back up here. That'd just really screw up your watering pattern. You want to come 10 days down and start up here and start your 11th day back at the beginning. But sometimes you can stagger that. So if you had the 7-foot wheel, the second time around, maybe you want to stagger it 20 feet off where you ran it the first time, so that you're moving your water pattern a little bit and getting a little more overall uniformity. So the second time, you put a swing joint and run it 20 feet sideways. And each of those sets, you've offset 20 feet across the field. Then the next time you come across, you say, well, I'm going to stagger it again, but this time I'll go the other way 20 feet. And so on. Every time you go across the field, you change. And then the fourth time across the field, you go back to the right on the valve. And your center line right on the valve again. And so see how you're changing that water pattern so that you're getting more overlap throughout the season than you would normally just by placing it on the 60-foot valve. So that's called offsetting. We can do the offset method.
Do you normally run 30 series?
Normally the sprinklers will be every 40 feet. There'll be a 30 series, somewhere between 5 to 7 gallons a minute generally, maybe 8 gallons a minute nozzles. About 50 psi is a pretty average pressure. There's going to be a friction loss from one end to the other. So the beginning heads have a greater pressure than the end heads. So oftentimes we can look at doing things like flow control nozzles to regulate so we have constant flow out of every nozzle. We could have a 10-pound differentiation from one end to the other of a wheel line just because of the length of it and the friction loss in it. So if we put a flow control nozzle, we could regulate that some.